All of this was because Zhongzhen had tampered with Guzu's place. Guzu hadn't forgotten this grudge. Guzu collected his thoughts and changed into a set of clothes. He needed to head to Yangshao City as soon as possible. Gaining that opportunity was his priority. He set off again. At this moment, it had been 5 days since Guzu encountered Yi Hongling. During these 5 days, Guzu had been traveling along the forest's edge. At this pace, if he moved a bit faster, he should reach Yangshao City in about a month. However, after walking for another half day, Guzu suddenly frowned. Ahead of him was a scene of chaos. Numerous trees and bushes were destroyed, and there was quite a bit of blood and footprints on the ground. It appeared that a highly skilled cultivator had been ambushed. The attackers likely used poison. It seemed the highly skilled person had escaped. From the traces at the scene, Guzu deduced this. A cultivator's battle was certainly not a good thing for a lone cultivator like him. After some thought, Guzu decided to change his route. But sometimes, even when you want to avoid trouble, trouble has a way of finding you. Not long after he changed direction, a gentle breeze blew, carrying a hint of blood. This made Guzu frown, just as he was about to change direction again. He heard a somewhat familiar voice. "Wait, help me!" Guzu turned his head and saw the female war god of the Tianxi mansion, Yi Hongling, whom he had met a few days ago, covered in blood, hiding in a thicket. After a few days, Yi Hongling's condition was clearly terrible. Beads of sweat the size of beans covered her forehead, her face pale as paper, her internal breath in complete disarray. Seeing Guzu looking over, Yi Hongling said, "Fellow cultivator, could you help me?" "No!" Guzu shook his head. Yi Hongling was stunned. "Why? I am just an ordinary lone cultivator. I don't know you, and I don't want to know you. I don't want to bring unnecessary trouble upon myself." Yi Hongling was a bit taken aback, completely at a loss for how to respond. She let out a helpless, bitter laugh. "If you are a lone cultivator, then you must be short of resources. Help me, and I will reward you, okay?" Guzu shook his head again. "No! Why? Your strength is much greater than mine. If you can't solve the problem, my help would be useless. It would be overestimating my abilities." Guzu shook his head again. He shook his head once more. After saying this, he turned and walked away. Yi Hongling watched his back, biting her lip. In the end, she could only watch Guzu leave, feeling somewhat disappointed. But she understood. His cultivation was indeed not high, so not wanting to get involved was expected. Just as Yi Hongling was about to give up, she saw Guzu returning. He ignored the look of surprise on Yi Hongling's face. Guzu directly asked, "What benefit do I get?" 800 spirit stones, and some pills." "No! The risk is too high." "Is your life worth only this few spirit stones?" I only have this many spirit stones," Yi Hongling said awkwardly. "And I just need you to protect me. I am poisoned and need to detoxify as soon as possible. During this process, I need someone to protect me. If you think it's not enough, you can name a price. After this is over and I am safe, I will compensate you with more spirit stones." Under Yi Hongling's hopeful gaze, Guzu finally nodded. "All right. 800 spirit stones. Give them to me now." Yi Hongling was stunned. This white-haired lone cultivator. When she first met him, she thought he was very special, with the aura of a reclusive master. But she never expected him to be like this. However, despite her complaints, Yi Hongling immediately took out a storage ring and threw it over. "All my spirit stones are in there." Guzu took it and scanned it with his divine sense, indeed finding 800 spirit stones inside. Besides that, there were also 2 bottles of basic spirit-restoring pills. Seeing his serious expression, Yi Hongling sourly asked, "Weren't you unwilling to get involved earlier? Why did you suddenly change your mind?" "Because I am already involved." Guzu shook his head and then added, "The The people chasing you are already here. I either fight my way out or move forward, but we will definitely be discovered. No matter what, we can't shake off the trouble. So it's not that you suddenly had a burst of kindness, but because you saw no way to extricate yourself, so you came back. Yi Hongling suddenly realized, then why did you still take my spirit stones? If there's no profit, there's no gain. Since I can't avoid the trouble, I might as well earn a bit from it. Gu Zhu replied again. This guy was just taking advantage of the situation. He was extracting a feather from every passing goose. While Yi Hongling was thinking about this, Gu Zhu had already come to her. Can you walk? If you can, follow me quickly. I can. Yi Hongling withdrew her thoughts. Immediately, the two began to move through the forest. Yi Hongling was a bit confused, because afterward, Gu Zhu led her through the forest seemingly aimlessly. Clearly, they hadn't seen anyone and didn't even sense anyone. But Gu Zhu would always call for a stop at certain times. Then they would change direction, wandering in the forest for 2 hours. What are we doing? Yi Hongling asked, puzzled. Gu Zhu didn't look at her, remaining vigilant of their surroundings. He answered, the people chasing you are close. We can only be careful and avoid them. Yi Hongling didn't understand. She looked around at the dense forest, seeing nothing, and couldn't even feel the presence of others. Of course, she wouldn't know that Gu Zhu had a natural affinity for the Tao rhythm of the surrounding environment and could use the celestial talisman to detect where there was danger. They traveled through the night with Yi Hongling. Gu Zhu stopped and said, we are surrounded. Unless we break through, we can't get out. How much time do we have? Yi Hongling asked. Gu Zhu sensed the Tao rhythm of the surroundings. In this place, at most 2 hours, we will encounter them. 2 hours? Yi Hongling took a deep breath. I want to heal my injuries and treat the poison first. All right. Gu Zhu nodded and then led Yi Hongling into a relatively hidden cave. Let's do it here. Yi Hongling nodded, although she still didn't know how Gu Zhu was so certain of these things. Now was not the time to consider that. Following Gu Zhu for half a day without encountering danger was already the best proof. The most important thing now was to heal. As Yi Hongling began to sit cross-legged and take medicine, slowly expelling the poison, Gu Zhu also took out the spirit stones, placing them in his palms, slowly absorbing the spiritual energy from the stones. Compared to 5 days ago, Gu Zhu's cultivation had improved a bit. Although he had been traveling during this time, he had not forgotten to cultivate during his free time. For a while, the cave fell into silence. The silence lasted for less than 2 hours. The two suddenly opened their eyes at the same time. They exchanged a glance, then looked towards the entrance of the cave. Someone's coming. Sure enough, not long after, voices could be heard outside. What's going on? Where did that woman go? She should be nearby. Search carefully. After some discussion, 3 cultivators spread out, beginning to search the surroundings carefully. Yi Hongling's face darkened. She had underestimated the poison in her body, even with nearly 2 hours of trying to expel it. The poison was like a bone-eating maggot, impossible to detoxify in a short time. At that moment, an aura approached. Yi Hongling held her breath, stealing a glance at Gu Zhu beside her, only to see him sitting cross-legged, a stick resting on his lap, his expression unchanged. The footsteps drew nearer. Yi Hongling gripped her spear tightly, ready to fight to the death at any moment. Just as the person was about to reach the cave, they suddenly stopped, then turned and walked away. Yi Hongling quietly breathed a sigh of relief, glancing at Gu Zhu again, who remained motionless, his face expressionless. What a calm demeanor. But then she suddenly heard Gu Zhu's voice in her ear. Can you still fight? With full strength? If I don't care about the consequences, I can make to full strength attacks at most, Yi Hongling answered. Gu Zhu pondered. 2 times. Just one will be enough. Yi Hongling didn't understand, thinking that the person had left. Why did Gu Zhu suddenly ask this? But she saw Gu Zhu suddenly stand up, then step towards the entrance of the cave. Gu Zhu's steps were exceptionally light, and in a few steps, he reached the cave entrance. However, he didn't step out directly, but stood quietly in place. In his hand, he still held the stick he had picked up and never used. At this moment, his back was to Yi Hongling, with his loose white hair shining in the moonlight. He appeared somewhat aloof. For some reason, the word aloof suddenly popped into Yi Hongling's mind. For a moment, she became even more curious about Gu Zhu. Although they hadn't interacted much, this was only their second meeting. Every time she saw Gu Zhu, he seemed to have an unusual aura. At this moment, Gu Zhu suddenly spoke. I remember your name is Yi Hongling, right? Yi Hongling was stunned, then heard Gu Zhu continue, when I call your name later, you will strike at me with all your strength. Yi Hongling was puzzled. At you? Yes, but just do as I say. Do you understand? I understand. Yi Hongling was still somewhat hesitant, but under Gu Zhu's calm demeanor, a sense of trust inexplicably grew in her heart. It was very strange. Gu Zhu was just a small cultivator at the 3rd level of chair refining, but in front of him, she always subconsciously overlooked his cultivation level. Since the 3 of you are here, why not come in? At that moment, Gu Zhu suddenly spoke loudly. Yi Hongling was stunned. Her heart suddenly filled with fear, because when Gu Zhu spoke, she realized that the 3 extremely faint auras had somehow appeared outside the cave. Previously, that person had clearly discovered the problem. They had only retreated without alarming them, pretending not to have found the cave. It seemed like they hadn't discovered the cave, but in reality, they had gone to secretly call their companions. Unable to help herself, Yi Hongling glanced at Gu Zhu in astonishment again. How did he know? At this moment, the voices of 3 people could be heard outside the cave. So there really is another person. He actually teamed up with that nasty woman. You two are quite good at hiding. You made us search for so long. Kid, you have some skill to be able to hide at the 3rd level of chair refining for so long. But unfortunately, since you've seen this woman, you can't escape death. Blame it on your bad luck. From where Yi Hongling was, she couldn't see the 3 people outside the cave, but she could sense the danger at the moment. She clearly perceived that the 3 people outside were not weak. One of them was at the peak of chair refining, and the other 2 were at the 7th level of chair refining. Facing these 3 whose cultivation clearly surpassed her own, Gu Zhu remained calm, seemingly unaffected by the 3. He simply asked, who wants to come in first? Or all at once? His voice was devoid of any fluctuation, but it was precisely this calm tone that made the 3 outside the cave uncertain. Of course, they were not fooled by Gu Zhu. The real reason was that there was also Yi Hongling inside. This woman was very powerful. If she weren't poisoned, she could easily kill them. Even now, poisoned, the 3 were still uncertain. However, those who dared to come after Yi Hongling would not remain indecisive for long. Soon, footsteps could be heard, judging by the aura. It was one of the cultivators at the 7th level of chair refining. The person was very cautious, taking each step carefully. Yi Hongling's heart sank. She gripped her spear tightly, ready to strike the moment the person entered the cave. Getting closer, Yi Hongling could even see the person's shadow. But it seemed the other person remained very cautious, not rushing in recklessly. They hesitated at the entrance for a while. The next second, they suddenly accelerated and quickly rushed into the cave. Yi Hongling was extremely nervous, preparing to strike hastily, but the next second, thud, The person suddenly collapsed headfirst to the ground, their body rolling forward twice due to the previous momentum. When they stopped, Yi Hongling suddenly gasped. This person was dead. A hole had appeared in their heart, pierced through with a single strike, extinguishing their life instantly. Abruptly, Yi Hongling looked up at Guzu, only to see him standing quietly at the cave entrance, holding the wooden stick without moving. If not for the blood dripping from the stick, Yi Hongling would have doubted whether Guzu had done it, because she hadn't seen how Guzu acted, and hadn't felt any spiritual energy fluctuations from him. In that instant, this was a cultivator at the 7th level of chair refining, already considered a late-stage chair refining cultivator, and Guzu was just a small cultivator at the 3rd level of chair refining. How did he do it? A small cultivator at the 3rd level of chair refining. How did he do it? While Yi Hongling was in shock, the two people outside the cave also clearly noticed something had happened to their companion inside. Their auras even became slightly chaotic. The woman is indeed inside. She made the move. You go in. With her injuries, she can't attack again. Go in and kill her. The two spoke. Then another cultivator at the 7th level of chair refining slowly walked towards the cave. Yi Hongling focused again. But this time, her gaze was on Guzu. She hadn't figured out how Guzu did it before, so she wanted to watch carefully. This second cultivator moved even slower. But even at this slow pace, they eventually reached the cave entrance. Yi Hongling couldn't help but focus her mind again. At that moment, the second person also suddenly sped up and rushed into the cave. Yi Hongling held her breath, wanting to see Guzu make a move. But at that moment, Guzu suddenly shouted, Yi Hongling! Yi Hongling didn't understand why Guzu called for her to attack at this moment, but she knew she didn't have many opportunities. Without any hesitation, she threw her spear towards Guzu. The moment the spear left her hand, Yi Hongling suddenly understood why Guzu had called for her to attack. Because the 7th level of chair refining cultivator was just a decoy, and the real threat, the peak chair refining cultivator, had taken advantage of the distraction to suddenly rush in. And the moment they entered the cave, Guzu had already taken a step back. At the moment the spear arrived, the cultivator at the peak of chair refining seemed to rush straight towards Yi Hongling's spear. Yi Hongling's strength was indeed formidable. Besides a flash of horror and fear on his face, the cultivator at the peak of chair refining had no power to resist. The next second, he was pinned straight to the cave wall by Yi Hongling's spear. What kind of calculation was this? To be able to judge so precisely, Yi Hongling was somewhat incredulous. But when she turned her head, she was suddenly stunned. Where was Guzu? She had just seen him take half a step back, without making a move. But now he had already disappeared without a trace. When Yi Hongling realized it, she saw at the cave entrance, Guzu was stepping back inside. The wooden stick in his hand was still dripping blood. Could it be that the cultivator at the 7th level of chair refining outside the door was dead? As this question surfaced in her mind, Yi Hongling's pupils suddenly shrank. Because she saw, in Gushu's other hand, he was holding an unfamiliar storage bag. He had killed. He had just gone out and directly killed the cultivator at the 7th level of chair refining outside. That wasn't just a piece of cabbage. How could it be possible to die without a sound, without even a noise? Yi Hongling's heart was filled with extreme horror. Don't just stand there stunned. This was just one of them. If we want to break out, we have to leave immediately. Gushu's voice came through. Yi Hongling was stunned for a moment, then suddenly reacted. She immediately forced her weak body to stand up. Yi Hongling also saw the cultivator at the 7th level of chair refining outside. That person, like the first one, had a hole pierced through their heart. Turning her head to look at the other two corpses inside the cave, Yi Hongling suddenly felt a sense of absurdity. Since when had cultivators become so easy to kill? As time passed, Yi Hongling's gaze towards Gu Zhu changed. The chase was not over yet, so after a short rest, the two prepared to continue their breakout and escape. But this time, they both increased their speed. Occasionally, Gu Zhu would lead Yi Hongling in a different direction, then continue their quick escape. During this escape, Yi Hongling noticed another strange thing about Gu Zhu. He rarely used his spiritual power. Or rather, every time he used it, he used very little. Every time, he used just enough, not wasting a single bit. This discovery surprised Yi Hongling greatly, because the hardest thing for a cultivator was not just cultivation, but also the use and control of their spiritual power. This technique was sometimes called minuteness. Only those with ample experience and who had achieved extreme control over their spiritual power to achieve such a level. Thinking back to the 2 times Gu Zhu made a move in the cave, to be honest, Yi Hongling had never sensed any fluctuation of spiritual power from Gu Zhu. This only indicated one thing. It wasn't that Gu Zhu didn't use spiritual power when he made a move, but that every time he did, his control over spiritual energy was so precise that not a trace leaked out. Unconsciously, Yi Hongling looked at Gu Zhu again. Who exactly was this person? In the dead of night, inside a cave in the forest, Gu Zhu suddenly opened his eyes, wiping his forehead, only to find it drenched in cold sweat. Had he dreamed of the people from Qingshuan Holy Land again? Gu Zhu sighed, feeling a bit unsettled, and could only murmur softly, "In this life, I have no regrets towards anyone. The only one I regret is myself." As soon as he said this, Gu Zhu's heart became completely calm, without a single ripple. Just then, footsteps approached. In just a moment, Yi Hongling returned, carrying her spear with a red tassel, her face full of excitement as she said, "We have now completely shaken off the enemies." 5 days had passed since the moonlit night of the triple kill. During these 5 days, Gu Zhu and Yi Hongling had been fleeing and hiding in the forest. They had encountered enemies several times along the way, but each time they managed to get through unscathed. As for the poison in Yi Hongling's body, the poison in her body was completely neutralized by the 3rd day of their escape. The enemies might have noticed this as well, which is why the pursuit had significantly decreased in the following 2 days. By today, they hadn't seen a single enemy. Earlier, Yi Hongling went out to check the situation and confirmed that no one was following them anymore. This indicated that they had successfully broken through and shaken off their pursuers. This made Yi Hongling breathe a long sigh of relief. Feeling extremely happy, Yi Hongling took out a few cleaned wild rabbits. "Benefactor, I specially caught a few wild rabbits. Today we can have a good meal to celebrate and let you taste my cooking skills." Gu Zhu didn't refuse, but he continued to use his affinity with the Tao of heaven and earth to sense the surroundings. In case of any approaching danger, Yi Hongling was unaware of this, and as she set the wild rabbits on the fire, she took out some seasonings. "Benefactor, do you have any specific preferences for taste?" "I'm not picky. Anything will do," Gu Zhu replied. "Okay." Yi Hongling nodded. After a while, she couldn't help but ask, "Benefactor, where are you headed on this journey?" "Nowhere in particular, just wandering around." This answer made Yi Hongling roll her eyes. In these 5 days, her understanding of Gu Zhu was still 0. This was evident from the fact that she still called him Benefactor. She didn't even know his name. As for where he came from, what his cultivation level was, or which sect or school he came from, she had tried to ask his name. But Gu Zhu's response at that time was just one sentence. "You and I are just a transaction. There's nothing worth remembering." These words made Yi Hongling give up on probing further. Soon, 8 wild rabbits were cooked. In the midst of it, Yi Hongling suddenly asked, "Benefactor, you never seem to ask who the people chasing me are. I'm not interested." Guzu shook his head. Why not? As a rogue cultivator, you must have the awareness of a rogue cultivator. Too much curiosity is not a good thing. Do you have friends? I used to. Guzu did not answer further. Yi Hongling, however, was extremely curious. The more she interacted with Guzu over the past few days, the less she seemed to understand, which made her even more curious about him. This white-haired rogue cultivator before her seemed to be full of countless secrets, but she knew the rules, so she didn't ask more. Guzu suddenly raised his eyebrows. Someone's coming. Yi Hongling's expression immediately tensed, but after a moment, hearing the slightly muffled sound of hoofbeats, Yi Hongling's expression relaxed again. It's the sound of the hooves of the black-hoofed Wuzi. It should be someone from my sect. Sure enough, not long after, 3 people on 3 horses arrived near the cave. Yi Hongling had previously left special marks to guide them here. Yi Hongling walked out first. When the 3 people saw Yi Hongling, they immediately came over. "Hongling, are you all right? Did junior sister Yi get hurt? We received a message saying that Chishui sect was chasing you. Why did they suddenly attack you?" These 3 people were not weak, especially the middle-aged man among them, who exuded a powerful and unmatched aura. He was at the golden core stage. The other 2 beside him were also quite strong, both at the foundation establishment stage like Yi Hongling, while the 3 were catching up with Yi Hongling. Gushu's attention was not on them. Instead, he looked at the horses they were riding. The horses were entirely black, with red flames at their hooves. Wherever they passed, they left a special mark. These were unique beasts from the Heavenly Strategy Mansion. Although Foundation Establishment cultivators could fly using their tools, and Golden Core cultivators could even traverse the void, the mounts of the Heavenly Strategy Mansion were not only fast in their sprints, but also had blessings in battle, which were quite mysterious. Uncle, Master, Senior Brothers, about the matter with the Chishui sect, please allow me to explain in detail when we return. Yi Hongling said a few words, then remembered Guzu beside her. This is the benefactor who saved me this time. If it weren't for him, I might have really perished in the Tianqi Mountains. The 3 of them also noticed Guzu, although they were all curious how a small cultivator at the 3rd level of chair refining could save Yi Hongling. They still politely nodded to Guzu. One of them, a young cavalryman with a jade-like face and handsome features, couldn't help but frown when he saw Yi Hongling standing so close to Guzu, but he didn't say much. Instead, he approached Yi Hongling with a concerned expression. "Junior sister, are you injured? Thank you for your concern, Senior Brother Zhao. I have already recovered quite a bit." Yi Hongling instinctively avoided getting too close, not giving him a chance to get near her. This instinctive action made Senior Brother Zhao frown even more, especially seeing Yi Hongling moving away from him and closer to Guzu. He couldn't help but glance at Guzu. The fact that the Chishui sect attacked people from our Heavenly Strategy Mansion is a serious matter. We should return quickly to report this. The Golden Core cultivator beside them spoke up. The 3 immediately mounted their horses. Senior Brother Zhao was the first to invite Yi Hongling, "Junior sister, ride with me." "Thank you for your kindness, Senior Brother, but I'll follow behind on my own." Yi Hongling refused again. Senior Brother Zhao's face stiffened. Another person tried to ease the situation with a laugh. "Haha, Hongling is a girl after all. How about this, Hongling? You ride my horse. I'll ride with Senior Brother Zhao." As he spoke, he proactively gave up his black-hoofed Wuzi horse. This time, Yi Hongling didn't refuse. However, as she mounted the horse, She immediately extended an invitation to Guzhu. Benefactor, come. I'll take you away from here. These words left the other three stunned, especially senior brother Zhao, whose eyes instantly turned to Guzhu. But to their surprise, Guzhu did not mount the horse but frowned and said, "Don't ride the horse." The four were all taken aback. Yi Hongling smiled and explained, "Benefactor, this is the black-hoofed wuzi, unique to our heavenly strategy mansion. Its speed is no less than that of flying magical artifacts, and it saves spiritual power. The people who were chasing us earlier, since they know your identity and haven't found us for so long, they will surely think of reinforcements and also realize you have the black-hoofed wuzi." Guzhu shook his head and said, Yi Hongling was surprised. "Benefactor, you mean? The people chasing us haven't given up. Those who dare to risk chasing you must have a reason to kill you at all costs. If that's the case, do you think they would give up?" Guzhu asked back. Yi Hongling immediately frowned deeply. Guzhu spoke again, "And if I were them, I would surely set an ambush targeting your black-hoofed wuzi." These words shocked Yi Hongling. Set an ambush? But senior brother Zhao couldn't help but sneer. "Do you think we're all just low-level chair-finding cultivators?" The other two also couldn't help but chuckle. They thought Guzhu might not even know what their cultivation levels were. A golden core leading 3 foundation establishment cultivators. This force was not something ordinary people would dare to plot against. Yi Hongling was also somewhat curious, looking at Guzhu, wondering what his opinion was. But just then let's part ways here. Unexpectedly, Guzhu directly proposed to separate. He didn't argue, didn't debate, but straightforwardly suggested parting ways. Benefactor. Yi Hongling was a bit surprised, but just as she opened her mouth, she saw Guzhu say, "I promised to help you once. Now that you are safe and reunited with your companions, I consider my promise fulfilled. Let's part ways here." With that, Guzhu turned and walked away. His steps hurried, seeing his back. Yi Hongling wanted to stop him, but senior brother Zhao was already urging. "Junior sister, the matter with Chishui sect is significant. Let's go quickly." "Yes, junior sister, let's hurry." The other two also chimed in. Though his cultivation isn't high, he is exceptionally vigilant. Following us wouldn't be comfortable for him. Hearing this, Yi Hongling hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded and called out to Gushu's retreating figure. "Thank you for your help these past few days, benefactor. Hongling is deeply grateful. If you ever need anything, you can come to the Heavenly Strategy Mansion to find Hongling. Hongling will do her utmost to help." With these words, the three urged their black-hoofed woozy horses and quickly left with the sound of hoofbeats. On the other side, Guzhu, after making sure the three had gone far away, suddenly changed direction and continued on his way. As a rogue cultivator, one must have the awareness of a rogue cultivator. Looking out for oneself is always the best choice. Seeing the sky about to darken, Guzhu immediately found another hidden cave to take shelter in. He then took out the green bamboo rod. This green bamboo rod could be used for fishing once every 10 days. And now, 10 days had passed. He wondered what he could catch this time. "I am indeed lacking many things right now, whether it's spirit stones or various cultivation resources. If I could get a cultivation method, that would be good too." In the cave, Guzhu continued fishing, silently pondering what he needed next. Just then, the fishing rod in his hand suddenly vibrated. Guzhu's eyes lit up. He immediately focused his mind and began trying to lift the rod. He thought it would be as difficult as last time, but unexpectedly, although there was some struggle, it was much easier compared to the last time. Before long, Guzhu lifted the rod, and the thing at the end of the fishing line and slowly appeared before Gushu's eyes, making him slightly stunned. "What is this?" unlike the expected scene of catching spirit stones or spirit herbs. At this moment, the other end of Gushu's fishing rod had a finger bone. Did I catch some trash? Guzu was a bit disappointed. He had seen in his visions that Zhangzhen had caught strange and unusual junk more than once. He thought his first catch with the celestial talisman would mean good luck. But now this finger bone appeared, making Guzu realize that this green bamboo rod doesn't discriminate. The finger bone was absorbing the Tao rhythm of the world. Just as Guzu was about to discard the bone, he suddenly paused. His eyes filled with astonishment as he stared at the finger bone. At the end of the spirit thread from the green bamboo rod, the seemingly ordinary finger bone was slowly attracting the Tao rhythm of the world the moment it appeared. This aroused Gushu's curiosity. He decided to take the finger bone off the spirit thread for a closer look. To be honest, at first glance, it looked unremarkable. It should be a segment of a human's right index finger bone, and it seemed to be very old, as there were signs of weathering on the bone. At a glance, one couldn't help but wonder if squeezing it a little harder might turn it into powder. But now, using the celestial talisman to examine it more closely, Guzu saw something unusual. There seemed to be a power of rules on it. Guzu was astonished. After hesitating for a moment, he squeezed it hard. But the imagined scene of the bone turning to powder didn't happen. Instead, the segment of bone remained completely intact. Keep in mind, even though Guzu was only at the 3rd level of chair refining, he was still quite strong. Even an iron rod could be bent with his grip. But facing the seemingly nearly fully weathered bone, he couldn't budge it at all. Guzu thought for a moment, then tried burning it with fire, drowning it in water, and even attempting to destroy it with spells. But without exception, all failed. This segment of bone remained completely undamaged. Finally, after several more attempts, Guzu came to a conclusion. There were rules entwined around it, making it only susceptible to the power of time. Apart from the power of time, no other force could affect this segment of bone. This conclusion left Guzu quite surprised. Who could the owner of this bone be? Even after thousands or tens of thousands of years, even though their body had decayed, this segment of bone still couldn't be damaged. A god or demon, or perhaps an immortal? Guzu murmured to himself. He had once stood at the pinnacle. He had a good understanding of a cultivator's strength. And from his understanding, this kind of power was not something an ordinary cultivator could achieve. Even if the great Tao crumbles, and the sun and moon cycle, my body will remain indestructible. Guzu murmured, his heart filled with immense shock. Such power was truly at the absolute pinnacle. But at the same time, Guzu was also amazed by the power of time. Even someone as remarkable as this could not escape the erasure of time. How lamentable! What a pity! At this moment, Guzu suddenly made another discovery. This segment of finger bone could absorb spiritual energy. It was lifeless. But when Guzu infused spiritual energy into it, he found the energy was silently absorbed. Guzu was astonished. After thinking for a moment, he placed a spirit stone next to the finger bone, but saw no reaction from the bone. However, as Guzu guided the spirit stone's energy towards the finger bone, he immediately noticed the energy entering the bone disappeared as if it had sunk into the sea. Interesting, he thought. The finger bone had no life force, yet it could autonomously absorb spiritual energy. What do you want with this spiritual energy? Guzu murmured to himself. Then he took out several more spirit stones, trying to uncover the secret of the finger bone. But when one spirit stone after another turned to dust, being completely absorbed by this piece of finger bone, Guzu started to feel distressed. After all, he was just a rogue cultivator. Even though he had earned 800 spirit stones from Yi Hongling, which was a small fortune. He still couldn't withstand the consumption of this finger bone. A full 20 spirit stones were used, and yet not a single ripple was made. The finger bone was like a bottomless pit, accepting everything without rejection. However, just when Guzu was about to give up, he suddenly sensed a change in the Tao of heaven and earth. Guzu raised an eyebrow. Feeling a sudden intuition rise within him, he immediately pricked his fingertip, letting a drop of his essence blood fall. Guzu didn't wait for the blood to fall. Instead, he quickly caught it with his finger, using his finger as a pen and his blood as ink. He swiftly wrote Tao runes on the piece of finger bone. In an instant, the weather outside the cave changed dramatically. Gale force winds roared, and strange forces madly rushed towards Guzu, as if trying to stop him from writing this rune. This was the divine invocation, and these interruptions were divine interference. If it were an ordinary talisman master, unprepared, they might indeed miss the opportunity. But Guzu was no ordinary person. He had fought bloody battles in secret realms for 500 years. His whole body exuded an unmatched killing intent. At this moment, he merely glanced around, let out a light cold snort. In an instant, those terrifying and strange forces were all turned to dust by this cold snort. The remaining strange forces trembled and did not dare to come forward. Seeing this, Guzu did not hesitate any longer, immediately speeding up, continuing to write. In a moment, when those strange forces were beginning to stir again, Guzu had already completed the final stroke. A complete talisman was written by him. After doing all this, Guzu did not stop. His hands formed a seal, and then he lightly shouted. The seal was then placed on the finger bone. Instantly, the blood talisman burst into a brilliant light and slowly surged into the finger bone. In the next moment, the wind stopped, the rain ceased, and the talisman written with blood by Guzu also completely disappeared. Only occasionally did glimmers of light flicker. At the same time, a connection began to form between Guzu and the finger bone. This was because Guzu had just used the sudden divine invocation of the Tao of heaven and earth to forcibly establish a connection with it. That Tao of heaven and earth was named Ya, able to know one's heart, bind the body, and control the soul. Now looking at it again, Guzu immediately understood the secret within the finger bone. Understanding this secret, a look of joy appeared in Guzu's eyes. This finger bone was a powerful weapon,